How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez here on Wrestling Observer Live. We are here every day, Monday through Friday, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, Sunday, 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern. Well, it's Monday here on the show, and you know what that means. We got a lot of news to talk about. We got the Raw lineup for tonight, the Dynamite lineup for this coming Wednesday. We've got notes on Max Dupri, SmackDown, Rampage. Tons of news to get into here today. But if you have not heard, and I don't know how you would not if you're a wrestling fan, Antonio Inoki, the founder of New Japan Pro Wrestling, became one of the biggest pro wrestling stars in the history of Japan, has passed away. Yahoo News Japan confirmed he passed away Saturday morning in Japan. Inoki, 79, had been battling health problems in recent years, had been confined to a wheelchair. Michael Cole Corey Graves on SmackDown took time to speak on his death. Inoki started wrestling in 1960, training under Ricky Dozan, one of the first popular pro wrestling figures in Japan. Later in the decade, he formed a tag team with Giant Baba in the JWA, with the team winning the NWA International Tag Team titles 4 times. Baba would later form All Japan Pro Wrestling in 1972, becoming a direct competitor against Inoki's New Japan Pro Wrestling. He was a founder of New Japan Pro Wrestling. After being fired from JWA in 1971 for planning a takeover, he formed New Japan. One of his most famous bouts during this era, of course, mixed martial arts match in 1976 against himself and Muhammad Ali, which ended in a draw. Headlined one of the highest attended shows in pro wrestling history, Pyongyang, North Korea defeated Ric Flair on the second night of a 2-day event. The announced crowds for those shows, 165,000 and 190,000 respectively. Although essentially everybody was commanded to be at the shows, so it's not like they sold those tickets, but still. Inoki retired in 1998. Final match, a victory over Don Fry. Continued to run New Japan until 2005, when Ukes bought out Inoki's controlling stock with the company. Later founded a new promotion, Inoki Genome Federation, inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2010. We'll talk more about Inoki and all the news after the break. Observer Live.
Who is Mark's all-time favorite wrestler?
I'm going to say Chris Hero.
Is he correct?
No. I love Chris Hero. But my favorite of all time is Eddie Guerrero.
Dang, that was the other one I was going to say.
You know, it's funny. I thought this was going to be an easy question, too.
We go.
Two.
Honestly.
Next one up. What is Mark most obsessed with outside of wrestling?
I'm going to say probably, I think he spends his most time drawing, so I'm going to say drawing and art.
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
That's spot on. All right, there you go. So far, you got 1 point. Awesome.
Hell yeah.
Who is Mark's celebrity crush?
Oh my God. Oh no. Oh no.
I don't even know if this is a topic you and I would have ever discussed.
I don't think so either, eh? I'm trying to think of like WWE divas that you like that you've spoken about, because that's where my brain goes. Tori Wilson.
I mean, I'll say yeah, just to get a free point. But...
And last one. What is Mark's favorite movie?
Euro Trip.
No.
What is it?
Dang.
It's The Fifth Element.
Okay.
Oh,
okay.
sure.
All right. You guys are learning about each other just now.
There you go.
Thank you for this. Yeah. Maybe we should.
We need it.
We should hit you up for like tag team counseling.
Does Kyle have any pets?
Yeah.
What pets?
He has a
What pets I got,
golden
bro?
retriever, and her name is Bodhi.
Who is Kyle's favorite wrestler? There you go.
Kyle's goat is The Miz.
Right, he's correct. My boy.
Is Kyle an introvert or an extrovert?
He's quite extroverted.
Do you
You'll
agree with
wind him
that?
up.
So I think I can go both ways, but definitely I can be a very extroverted at times for sure.
You can wind him up pretty easy. It's
very easy.
And last one. What is Kyle's favorite thing to eat?
Chicken breast, rice, and broccoli with sriracha. Nah.
No.
Domino's pizza.
No, it was avocado, not broccoli.
Oh, did I say broccoli?
You said broccoli, bro.
I meant
You
avocado.
fucked it.
Damn it!
I love it.
No! We're gonna have to break up.
You
now
ruined it.
after this.
Yeah, sorry.
Let's pour
Look at
it.
you,
How many
Dominique.
points
The
was that,
end.
Adam?
Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. I know Mike's got a lot to say about Inoki. Can I say a few things first, Mike?
You sure can.
I'm going to try not just be totally scattered because a lot of this, I mean, we can go back well over 100 years to look at like this whole Antonio Inoki story because I am, in fact, as some of you may know, because I've said it 1,000 times, I'm a black belt in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. You aware of that, Mike? I am.
I am.
And
So
so I've always been interested in like the history of jiu-jitsu and pro wrestling and mixed martial arts and how all of this ties together. And no one will really know everything, and people will argue about this or that. But if you go back 100 years, 120 years, and you look at the jiu-jitsu scene in Brazil, I mean, most people will tell you, and it's probably true, that Helio Gracie never was involved in any sort of worked matches because he hated it. But the scene, I find it impossible to believe that they did not do pro wrestling and pro wrestling style programs. Because if you go back and you look at how often people had these big fights and really the storylines, I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but let's be real. In both pro wrestling and I'm sure jiu-jitsu in Brazil and around the world, there were a lot of worked fights to create programs, to draw money, to make people money, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this is not something that was just exclusive to pro wrestling. So, the founder of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, Helio Gracie, had a very famous match in the 50s against Kimura. And this was in Japan, and essentially what happened, there's, of course, the Gracie side of the story and then actual what happened. And, you know, he got beaten. Helio Gracie got beaten. He was beaten with the Kimura, and the Kimura is named the Kimura because of Kimura and the fact that he beat Helio Gracie with this Kimura. So, Kimura, Masahiko Kimura, he also did some pro wrestling in Japan. And one of his pro wrestling matches, there was I believe it was a tag team match, and on the other side was Ricky Dozan, who was a Japanese professional wrestler. And Ricky Dozan is an all-time legend, not just of Japanese pro wrestling, but of pro wrestling. And one of the reasons that happened was because in a match with the famous Kimura, he essentially beat the hell out of him. He shot on him and beat him up. And that, combined with the fact that, you know, Japan had lost World War II, and they were looking for a hero. And Ricky Dozan was that hero, and they would bring in large Americans. And Ricky Dozan, coming off, you know, destroying Kimura, and then beating all of these Americans, he became an all-time legend. And he was eventually murdered. But Inoki was trained by Ricky Dozan. And this link, you know, I believe that in Inoki's mind, and this was why, like, throughout Inoki's life, he was all about showing that pro wrestling was the strongest. And he was obsessed with, you know, showing how strong pro wrestlers were and studying what eventually became mixed martial arts and shoot style and the whole shebang. I think it dates all the way back. And the famous fight with Muhammad Ali was an early MMA fight. And because of the rules, it ended up being what it was, which was a 15-minute boring match where, Inoki went down on his back and he leg kicked Inoki, but they weren't going to go to the ground and they weren't going to do grappling on the ground or anything like that. And, it's a horrible match, but it is an absolutely famous match for a lot of reasons. And for those that follow mixed martial arts, I mean, essentially, it was not the birth of mixed martial arts, but a lot of people will say it was the birth of mixed martial arts. And, if it were 2022, he won. He beat Muhammad Ali. But because of the rules, it was a draw. And most people didn't understand what happened in the fight. And therefore, it did not hurt the sport of boxing or Muhammad Ali. Although it may have hurt, Muhammad Ali physically in the sense that, this could have been one of the things that led to his decline was the abuse that he took to his legs in this match. But one way or the other, they had this match. And, of all people, I was reading the New York Times article, and Conor McGregor noted that, man, there was a moment where they were on the ground and, Inoki moved to the mount, and of course it was stopped and stood back up again. But if he had armbarred or choked out Muhammad Ali, everything would have been different. If you're older, if you're my age or older, I mean, you grew up in that era where what is fighting? Well, it's boxing. And then, there's karate. And nobody knew. I shouldn't say nobody knew, but that was like the idea. It's like nobody knew about concussion. Nobody knew what a real fight really looked like, because to everybody in this country, at least, a real fight was two dudes standing there with giant gloves on and hitting each other. And the reality that some people knew in martial arts was that, man, a great wrestler takes down a boxer. And they even talked about this a little bit on WWE television. Like Gorilla Monsoon had made this comment, decades ago, that, a good wrestler takes down Muhammad Ali and it's over. But, to most of America, nobody believed that. The heavyweight boxer is the toughest man in the world. And then, of course, this all led ultimately to the debut of UFC, and people found out what an actual fight really was. And they had, the boxer that went in with one glove and got killed on the ground by this skinny guy, Royce Gracie, who actually was not small at all. He was like 6 feet tall, but they like to tell stories. Anyway, so on and so on. So with Inoki, he was always about, he would bring in fighters from other disciplines for pro wrestling matches and beat them because he wanted to prove that pro wrestling was the strongest, the greatest martial art. And ultimately, to cut to the chase, at the end of the day, he went too far, as we all learned in the early 2000s, where, in fact, he began bringing in fighters to actually fight his professional wrestlers. And it was a disaster. And this ultimately led to his ousting from New Japan, and we could talk about that and everything. But the one thing that I don't think Inoki realized at the end was fans didn't necessarily need to know that the pro wrestlers could legitimately win all these fights. It was enough for wrestling fans to believe that, hey, this may not be on the level, but these are some bad dudes. And they would suspend their disbelief as they would beat these real fighters. But I don't think they ever needed to actually see them beat real fighters. And then when they went in and lost to real fighters, well, that hurt the aura of Yuji Nagata, etc. And so really that's kind of the story of Inoki. I mean, he came up wanting to prove that these athletes were the toughest athletes in the sport. And for decades, he was actually, it's what helped make him a legend, but at the end of the day, he went too far and it bit him in the ass. And that's the story of Antonio Inoki, the short story. I mean, we could talk for decades, but that's kind of what I was thinking when I heard about the death of Inoki.
An incredibly complex and complicated legacy. It really is. And you've said a mouthful there. An incredible butterfly effect with a lot of things when it comes to Inoki. What if Inoki, we always hear about Jim Crockett Promotions and the selling of the WTBS time slot by WWF because Vince McMahon needed the money before WrestleMania. He had exhausted a lot of his credit. Well, he makes $1 million booking deal with Antonio Inoki. He ends up screwing over Inoki by taking Hogan and Andre away over the next 2 years. But that $1 million, Vince needed that money. What if Antonio Inoki doesn't go all in on wanting pro wrestling to really truly still be strongest, and for these pro wrestlers, the facade to still be raised up? What if he doesn't do that when it comes to Yuji Nagata, and then later on with Shinsuke Nakamura? What if Hiroshi Tanahashi, that had been approached with leaving with Keiji Muto, with Kendo Kashin, when they had enough of Inokiism towards the end, what if he leaves? There is so much to talk about with Antonio Inoki, and I'm not sure how much we're going to do today, but it is a fascinating story. Much like Rikidozan, much like Santo, he's on a par when it comes to culture in their countries at a little bit of a different level than almost anybody in this country could ever be.
We're headed to a break. Back in a moment with more Wrestling Observer Live.
What are you studying? Like, what's going on there?
So I never really talk about that stuff. Like I did, not many people know, but I went to law school in Brazil. I didn't finish. I did 4 years and a half, but then I had to come here and I had to make this decision, finish my school or come to US. And I was like, I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to go to US. So I didn't finish my school back then. And then I always wanted like to go back and do something, but I got like super busy wrestling and had to learn English. So I never really did. So a little bit ago, I decided to go and then start studying like to be a nutrition coach. So yeah, it's kind of like good for me because it not distract me, but like taking my head away from wrestling a little bit because I have my own life, you know. So I have to like have something outside too. But yeah, it's been fun. But yesterday I had a test and it was like 3:30 a.m. and I'm studying and I'm doing it, but thank God everything went well. So my goal in Brazil was kind of to be like, kind of like the same thing as the FBI here, equivalent of it. So I never really wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to have law school because I need to have law school to go pursue the career that I wanted. And I was never really in love, you know, with it. It was just something that I had to do to get in my like main goal. So I was like, nah, what do I really like? I like to work out. I like to have a good diet. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. It's time. So I'm super excited. So after that, I want to go for like keep studying and do like to another course to do to be a personal trainer too. I want to combine everything and I want to learn like as much as I can and maybe like start my own business. For now, it's just more for me to learn, you know, but who knows about the future? I feel like as a wrestler, our career is not that long. We need our bodies and then we get old. So I want to be prepared for like after wrestling. Being honest, it was the best day of my life ever. I know it's cliche, but like it really was. Like I was waiting for something to go wrong because I was talking with so many people and everybody was like, hey, don't worry if something goes wrong, not goes the way you want it to be. It's okay. Just have fun, enjoy. So I was kind of like mentally prepared for something to go wrong, right? And it didn't. The day was just perfect. Like I was really nervous. Let me tell you, it was like worse than when I had like a special match. Like that was crazy.
Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. We can talk more about Inoki later in the show. I'm going to go over a little bit of the news here, and then we can do questions or whatever. And, of course, Wrestling Observer Radio Friday with Garrett, and last night with Dave and I. A lot of talk, hours on Inoki, and I'm sure there's more to come. All right, Raw tonight, we have a contract signing for Bianca and Bayley's Raw Women's Title ladder match at Extreme Rules. Matt Riddle and Seth Rollins go face-to-face. And they've announced that Daniel Cormier is going to be the referee of their Fight Pit match coming up Saturday at the pay-per-view. We have Ray and AJ versus the Judgment Day, Braun Strowman versus Chad Gable, Johnny Gargano versus Otis, and Candice LeRae and Dakota Kai. That's your lineup for Raw tonight. And then Dynamite on Wednesday has Bryan Danielson and Daniel Garcia against Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara, MJF versus Wheeler Yuta, Hangman Page versus Roosh, Tony Storm, Athena, and Willow Nightingale versus Jamie Hayter, Serena Deeb, and Penelope Ford, Darby Allin versus Jay Lethal. Luchasaurus will be in action. And who knows, maybe he'll be part of National Scissoring Day with the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn. I think we should celebrate National Scissoring Day here on this show as well. But I don't really know how. You know what I'm saying? You're way over there. Don't give me that face. And what's with the wind, dude?
Well,
holy smokes.
These are the after effects of Hurricane Ian blowing up the East Coast, and we really barely got anything at all, if that tells you what it was like if you down in that hurricane in Florida. And I don't know how many people are listening right now because they're concerned their power is still off, but best wishes to everybody down there. Obviously, it affected wrestling all around the world last week. Jonah couldn't make his way to New Japan in London. Obviously, there were a bunch of people that were off the AEW and WWE shows that needed to be rewritten a little bit. So best wishes to everybody down there because it had to have been nasty.
Alrighty, AW no longer airing through broadcaster Space. AW is no longer on Space in several countries, including Mexico, South America, and Central America. So, as noted last night on the Observer Radio Show, what happened was their deal was coming due, and they were not offered what they felt was a fair deal to continue, and so they pulled it. And now, if you are in any of those places, except Brazil, in Brazil, you can still watch it on Space. But everywhere else, you have to subscribe to AEW Plus. I guess they figured that they could make more money getting people to subscribe to AEW Plus than what they were offered for the Space deal. And the belief is that there may be some other options, and that's why they didn't want to commit to a multi-year deal with Space. Because once you are committed to the deal, you're committed to the deal. In theory, of course. So that's the story there. And, you know, we're not going to play gloom and doom here, but it's not always, you know, it's been this case for quite a while that every time a deal is up, people are offered significantly more money for it. And quite frankly, WWE will be offered significantly more money for their next deal. But it's not like a guarantee. I mean, and you got to look at also with AEW. I mean, I'm not saying that if they were offered the same amount of money at their next television deal, that they like pull it and go to fight. But, you know, they have to take into account a lot of different things. They may not be offered less money, but they may not be offered much more money. And then there are decisions that have to be made. Do we accept this offer? Do we let this expire? Do we start, you know, negotiating with other people? So we shall see what happens when their deal comes due.
And deals like this are not wholly unusual, too, where Brazil is not part of that package.
Why are you so quiet? What happened?
I don't know. Why am I so quiet?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me?
No, you sound like you're on the telephone.
What?
Your tie lines, your cable's all messed up.
How about now?
There we go.
That's better.
You got to jam it into that thing. Don't you know anything about anything? All right, go ahead. Television deals.
Maybe we'll find that out.
If you'd only been scissoring, we wouldn't have this problem.
Oh, we'll have to find that out during scissoring day. We got to make sure we jam it in there to give the people what they need. But deals like this are not wholly unusual in South America when Brazil is not part of the deal for obvious reasons. It's because, well, they speak Portuguese there, so they end up having a separate deal for Spanish language. So a lot of people were wondering about that, but it's not really all that unusual.
We may need to get you a new cable. We'll monitor this throughout the show.
How it's sounding.
Something's weird. You just jiggled it and it worked?
Sometimes it's how that works.
You just jostled it a little and all of a sudden?
Yeah, you just slap it about a little bit.
All right. Well, Max Dupri. You know, I predicted this yesterday in the Observer Radio Show. I can't help but note that Dave was skeptical.
Oh, yeah?
Max Dupri will reportedly be returning to the L.A. Knight character as portrayed in NXT. He is back to being listed as L.A. Knight on the internal roster. Meanwhile, Marseille, Mansois, and Maxine Dupri will continue under the Maximum. So I like that. So he got a what is now apparently a fake name, but then he ended up with his sister with the same fake last name. But now he's going back to his other name, but she's keeping the fake last name. Is that what's going on? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Is Mansoor keeping Mansois?
You mean Mansois?
Is he keeping Mansois when they go over to Saudi Arabia, or do you even bring him over to Saudi Arabia?
Why can't you bring him to Saudi Arabia as Mansois? That's his name.
I don't know. Do you really want to see Mansois getting his ass kicked all over? If
he doesn't have to lose. Mansois can go over there and get a big win.
He can. Really?
Yes, of course he can. It's fake.
Who do you have him beat?
Bro, anybody. Otis. It doesn't matter.
Oh, come on. You
can't
beat anybody. Otis.
He can beat anybody.
Chad Gable, though, maybe. Chad Gable.
For the first match back in 12 years, Ricky Steamboat will be teaming with multi-promotional tag team champions FTR at November's Return to the Dragon show in Raleigh. This story is so weird to me.
Why?
Because when they were talking about Ric Flair's last match, everybody was talking about how Ricky Steamboat may be on the other side of a multi-person match. And, Ricky Steamboat did this big speech about how, I don't want to come back. My last matches, everybody's going to remember those. And this whole thing about how he's just done. So they do the match, and then a month later, hey, I'm on my way back. And granted, he's teaming with FTR.
Yeah.
But you know what worries me?
What?
Well, the opponents. There's a mystery opponent.
Yeah.
Jay Lethal, Brock Anderson, and a mystery opponent.
Uh-oh.
Let me make this abundantly clear. I don't think it's Ric Flair.
Oh, no.
I don't think it's Ric Flair. But if you want me to come on the air here and with a straight face tell you there's no chance it's Ric Flair, I ain't going to do that. So, I guess we'll see.
Well, the billing is Arn Anderson's Four Horsemen, including Jay Lethal as Black Machismo, who was never part of... You can't even tie that into the Four Horsemen at all, but Jay Lethal's in the match along with Brock Anderson. I doubt we're going to get Tessa Blanchard, so, I guess there's a possibility it could be Ric Flair, but maybe there's a possibility that Ricky Steamboat maybe in the moment really didn't want to come back and do that match, or maybe he saw what was going to take place and saw the scenario laid out and went, nah, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want to come back for my last match and have it be alongside Ric Flair's last match, especially if you had some doubt about how Ric Flair would fare in that match. So with FTR, it's a six-man tag. He's got to stand on, the corner of the ring. He'll hit somebody with a chop. I don't know if we're going to see a full flying body press or not, but I guess if he can do it, cool. I'm fine with him never doing a match. I'm fine with a lot of people never wrestling again. I was fine with Bryan Danielson if that's all it was going to be. I'm fine with a lot of people not coming back. But if Ricky Steamboat feels as though he can and he's cleared by a doctor, hey, I'm all for it, I guess.
Listen, everybody, I'm not Ric Flair, for sure. But I was a wrestler, much like old Ric Flair.
Here we go.
Yeah, here's the deal, everyone. I was satisfied with my performance in that match with Filthy. Okay? I was satisfied. So
I was not impressed with your performance. Where's the GSP drop?
I have no desire in me to do it again. Okay? Although, after watching Stardom, if something happens to old Zack Sabre Jr. But anyway.
Bro, you ain't pulling no stumps there either.
So, but the thing with Flair is, and listen, he shouldn't have done the match, and he's old, and he's got whatever he's got inside him. But he made a lot of mistakes that weekend. He didn't eat at all that day. He drank too much. He was dehydrated. It was a disaster, okay? And in his mind, he was like, you know what, man, I felt great training, and man, I just screwed everything up that day. And if I did it again, I'd eat, I wouldn't drink too much. I'd be hydrated, and man, I could have a way better last match.
And I'd still be delusional.
I'll bet you anything that's going through his mind right now.
I'm sure it is. And he'd be delusional for thinking that, the same way he was probably delusional the last time around. I know I'll probably want to prove something to myself until the day I die. I'm sure there's something out there that I did not accomplish or I was close to and didn't finish that I am going to drive myself nuts about, that I am going to want to make better or make good on or something like that. But at some point, you just got to let it go. And Ricky Steamboat, I am hoping he's just on those ropes for that match.
I think Flair watched my last match and said, I can't let this Alvarez kid have a better last match than me.
Oh, for God's sakes.
Back in a moment, Observer Live.
Let's go.
All right, here we go. Question number 1. You're always traveling. What are your top 3 favorite places you've been to?
Okay, Paris, because it was super special. I love to go back to Brazil every time because I see my family and I have such like a great time. And the third one, I had a great experience every time I went to Cancun. Mexico is like my third home, I would say.
I love all of those picks, and Cancun is amazing. Like Isla Mujeres, all of that. Oh, so nice.
I want to go there every week. Let me tell you, I have time off. I want to go there.
Hey, girl, hit me up. I will go to Cancun too.
Let's go trip. Let's go.
Hell yeah. Question number 2. If you weren't a wrestler, what do you think you'd be doing right now?
I would be in judos too, for sure. Being an athlete is my life. I was born to do that. I was born to represent my country. I'm doing this since I was 7 years old. So I for sure would be in judo right now.
Awesome. And question number 3, if you had an all-girl rock band, who'd you pick as your 3 other bandmates? And they can be anybody, celebrity, best friends, wrestlers, people from the past, people from the present, anybody.
Damn, I would say I would have Nyla. Dude, Nyla is the best. Let me tell you,
awesome.
All her tweets and that, a badass and a funny person. I need to have Nyla with me. She will defend me and she's gonna make me laugh. So I would Nyla. I would have my sister because she's my best friend. I need her with me. I feel safe around her. She's like younger than me, but I'll say she's older because she's way more responsible. And I would have my little sister. Like she's adopted, but like she's my baby. And like we took her, my family got her when she was 2 months. And she's our baby, our like inspiration, my motivation to keep growing, doing better in life. So I can show her that like you can have a better life no matter where you come from.
Oh my God, I love that. That's so awesome. And there's nothing like a sisterly bond, a sisterly love. It's not replaceable. It's irreplaceable. Question number 4. What's the one item you must always have stocked in your kitchen?
Ooh, in my kitchen. I'm a bad person cooking. I don't cook. I don't have much in my kitchen, but candies.
Yes. Any particular flavors or brands or anything like that?
I would say like Bis is a type of like chocolate. It's a brand from Brazil. I love it.
Well, back here on the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live, Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. We had SmackDown and a Rampage on Friday. Bro, this Rampage show. This was a good show. Like, I liked watching it, but I think I was the only one that watched it. There might have been some others. But this is not what you would call a marquee show. Now, I did a big review of this yesterday with Vinny and Craig. And I should have opened with this, and that is that I answered this in the Q&A. People were like, can we stop reviewing Rampage and review SmackDown now? And I said no, and this is why. Let's not forget that this was taped on Wednesday, and there were a number of talents that were affected by the hurricane and could not make it to the show. So I'm not saying that's the whole reason this was a non-marquee edition of Rampage, But I would consider this an aberration. And we've got several weeks, I think a full month of live Rampage shows. And the Battle of the Belts is also this coming Friday night. So I think that we should give this a month, see how it goes. But this certainly was not a show where when you looked at the lineup, it's a must-see. Acclaimed, Butcher and Blade, and Private Party for the tag titles. I mean, it was fine, but Acclaimed won, of course. Lee Moriarty and Fuego del Sol. Lee Moriarty just beat him. Then Morrissey chokeslammed him. We set up Andrade and 10 on this show in the middle of nowhere. They announced Andrade versus 10, Mask versus Career.
Seems a little dramatic.
We had Jamie Hayter beating Willow Nightingale. Liked the match. It was a good match. But she won, Jamie Hayter. And then we had a bunch of video packages. And then the main event, I love them, and I like the match a lot. But it was Rush versus John Silver. And they had a good match. Rush killed him dead with the bull's horns in the corner. And then that was the end. And then they set up a match with, Rush and Hangman Page for this week. And then on the front page, our reviewer here wrote, and I quote, "A perfectly fine but unremarkable show." And what more can you say about this? It was a perfectly fine but unremarkable show. And that was Rampage.
That sounds fair to me. Sounds fair.
Now, SmackDown. SmackDown. Sami Zayn and Solo Sikoa beat Ricochet and Madcap. 12 minutes. And man, you know, you're in Canada. And even if you weren't in Canada, the Sami Zayn's so over. Him and Solo beat Ricochet and Madcap, and they booed Ricochet and Madcap out of the building. And it wasn't even like Sami Zayn and Solo Sikoa worked babyface. They worked heel. And then the babyface made a comeback and got booed out of the building. And, of course, Solo Sikoa got the big win. And then they're going backstage to the locker room, and Jey Uso stops Sammy. He says, I see right through you. If you try to screw this family. And Sammy just points to the shirt and says, maybe you should talk to old Roman. Walks into the room. So he did not deny that he was going to screw the family. It's a very strange storyline. I'm not sure where they're going here. But they're where they are now, they're making you, the viewer, think that Sammy's actually not a nice guy. And he's got a plan to screw the Bloodline. And the Bloodline is very popular. And in fact, Jey Uso is in traditional storytelling, he's the babyface here. He sees this guy trying to screw his family. He doesn't like it. So we'll see where this goes. But it's this was an interesting little twist that they did right here.
This is where fantastic shades of gray work. There is nobody in that bloodline that's a good person. Again, this goes to the Reservoir Dogs concept of booking. Nobody here is a good guy, but everybody here is really great at what they do. And this feels like it's got a lot of Paul Heyman all over it. It's got a lot of Paul Heyman all over it when SmackDown's on, and he's standing right there with everybody. But this whole thing is great. It's got a lot of little release valves in there, depending on what directions that you want it to go. But Solo Sikoa is the thing that's forgotten about in this, because he's come up and immediately he is a believable presence as a guy who kicks ass as a member of that roster. So as far as a guy making a debut up from NXT, sure, he's in a great position, but he's lived up to his end of the deal so far.
We had the Drew McIntyre Austin Theory match, which went a whopping 2 minutes to a horrible run-in DQ, but it led to a 6-man later, so that was that. We had a bunch of segments with Max Dupri and Maximum Male Models that led to him quitting, throwing all of his stuff down. He's no longer part of this group. Going back to old L.A. Knight, which was also a horrible name. L.A. Knight. Hit Row beat Los Lotharios. It was fine. Just another 2-minute match. Then we had Ronda Rousey versus Natalya. And, I mean, it was fun enough while it lasted. It wasn't perfect. But Ronda gets the ankle lock. And then, golly, they just love this angle. So out comes Liv Morgan. Ronda's heading to the back, and her path is blocked by Liv Morgan. Liv Morgan has a bat. Ronda Rousey is unarmed. Liv Morgan goes to swing the bat, and Ronda Rousey avoids it and beats her ass. Beat her ass so bad, Mike just was painfully dehydrated. So she beats her and she beats her. And finally, they give Liv a little something. And then Ronda beats her ass again. And then security comes out, and security is dragging away Ronda Rousey. And Liv Morgan leaps in and attacks Ronda Rousey from behind. And they're pulled off again. And I just watched this thing, and I thought the other guy was horrible at making baby faces. You're not doing Liv any favors here. She had a baseball bat. Ronda Rousey was unarmed, and Ronda Rousey still beat her ass. And I'm supposed to believe, I could not believe this segment. This sucked. At an Imperium promo, Sheamus came out. They attacked Sheamus. He fought back. They attacked him again. They laid him out. This sets up Sheamus versus Gunther for the Intercontinental title coming up on Friday. A match I believe that Sheamus is likely going to win. But we'll see. Bayley beat Shotzi. Match was all right. And then afterwards, she's attacking Shotzi, so Bianca ran down to make the save. Bayley at first bailed, then attacked her from behind. Bianca still grabbed her, was going to hit the KOD on the ladder, but Bayley grabbed the top rope and fled. And, yeah, we'll see what happens in their ladder match. I'm a little worried about this ladder match as a result of the injury to Bayley and her recovery. Then the main event, Drew McIntyre, Johnny Gargano, Kevin Owens versus Austin Theory and Alpha Academy. And Babyfaces won. McIntyre hit the Claymore on Theory. A lot of good action. The fans were into it. Good match. McIntyre grabbed the strap and whipped the hell out of Theory to end the show. You know, Vince had some things that he did, and he's gone now, so they don't do it anymore. But he had some other things that they did that, man, they just, they still do. One of them is making your baby faces look like geeks, you know. It doesn't happen a lot, but every now and then, like the Liv Morgan segment, she's a geek. Now, the rest of the baby faces on this show, they did fine with, but, man, she was a geek. And then the other one they love to do is this Austin Theory. He's got that Money in the Bank briefcase, and so they are not afraid to just beat and humiliate this guy. And in theory, he should either be the next champion or he's going to cash in and fail or whatever. But, man, they give this guy nothing. It's like when you used to win a title and all they did was just beat you like a drum right and left. So, you know, they've changed a lot of things for the better, but, you know, Hunter isn't diametrically opposed to Vince in every way. There were things that those two guys agreed on, and apparently this is one of those things.
Well, thankfully, both Austin Theory and Liv Morgan are geeks. They really are. Liv Morgan has been a geek the entire time. She's been a dumb friend the entire time. She's been a weak person that is always going to, but she's strong inside because she lost, but I'm going to come back. They have done such damage to her, and she seemed like somebody they got over organically with the crowds, and they've messed it up. And if this is going to lead to her being a heel because fans are naturally down the line going to cheer Ronda because she's kicking ass, and that's how Charlotte returns or whatever you do, I'm actually all for that. I don't know if Liv Morgan, babyface underdog, unless she's going to be somebody that's certainly slotted a lot lower on the card and never a threat. Okay, if that's what she's going to be, fine, but otherwise turn her heel. When it comes to Austin Theory, he was a geek anyway. He was introduced as a geek, a smiling moron standing next to Vince McMahon. And frankly, I kind of like what they've done with him, getting punched out, always getting tripped up, making to be made to look like a fool, because I think you needed to tear their character back down to build him back up again. Now, at some point, you're going to have to build him back up again, but I don't think he's a character that they're all of a sudden going to give up on either. So I think everything is fine for right now, but they are geeks. I mean, they are being treated in storyline how they are, because that's what they are.
This fella here said babyfaces in pro wrestling have always been kind of stupid. Hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
there's a big difference between being stupid and being, for example, brave. Okay, Sheamus came out. And he's like, you know what? My friends, they're stuck in Florida. They couldn't be here tonight. But you know what? I'm here. And he goes to the ring, and yeah, he got beaten up, but it's not like his friends couldn't make it. That's different than, yeah, I don't need no friends. I'm going to take you guys on by myself. That's stupid. The other's brave. He's in a war and he's lost everybody. Well, I'm going to fight to the end. Okay.
Well, that's situational too. That's not always 100%.
Sure, exactly. That's my point. Like, you know, there's a difference between being brave and when you talk about bravery, yeah, there's always arguably a little bit of stupidity involved with a lot of bravery. Not all of it, but sometimes. And but that's different than just being stupid. And you also, if you're a babyface, you know, you can be a good-hearted character that maybe sometimes is a little too trusting, and you get screwed by bad people. That's different than being stupid.
Yeah.
And oftentimes in WWE, more so with Vince than anybody else, you're stupid. Or the other word that's often used is, you know, probably not the right word, especially with National Scissoring Day coming up, but impotent, okay? And, of course, a word like that usually doesn't work for a female, but Liv Morgan was impotent. She had a baseball bat, okay? She had a baseball bat. She was squaring off against an unarmed opponent. She goes to swing said bat, and she gets booted in the stomach and her ass kicked, okay? That is an impotent babyface. You can't do it all perfectly in pro wrestling, but, you know, you can try harder than that. That did Liv zero favors. No.
Sometimes it's cold and dry in the valley, I guess you could say, and that can happen. But, yeah, you know, baby faces, they make bad emotional decisions sometimes. Doesn't mean that they're weak. Doesn't mean that they're pathetic. And unfortunately, with Austin Theory and Liv, we've had that way too often.
Back in a moment, Observer Live.
Question number 5. Where did you go on your first date ever?
My first date ever? I don't remember. Like with Sammy, we went to a trampoline park, but like my first date ever, I don't remember.
You're like, I already forgot about all those others in the past. They're done. Question number 6. What's something people would be shocked to know about you?
Ooh, okay. I feel I'm really like, what's the right word? I'm really silly, and I feel people don't get to know this part of me. I'm always like, Sammy always say that. He was like, when you showed me this like silly part of you, I was shocked because I'm really silly. Like I make face, I make jokes, like, but I need to feel like really comfortable with the person that I am with.
I love that. Question number 7. If one actress could play you in a movie, who would it be?
I don't know this one. First, because I'll be honest with you, I'm bad with names.
I feel you.
I'm really bad with names, like memorize names, like movie names, actors. I don't know. I'm not gonna embarrass myself here with that. I already did it, but let's keep this going.
Well, let's see if you can answer this one. If you could star in any movie, any role, which would it have been?
Damn.
I'll take any answer. If not, we'll just make it something else.
I don't know. I'm embarrassed now. I have no idea.
Hey, it just gives you homework. You can think about it afterwards.
Yeah, I promise I will. And it happens all the time. Like people ask me, like, what's your favorite movie? And I'm like, where is Sammy? Sammy, the one that we watched 2 days ago. What's the name of it? I never know.
You know what's funny? In a day from now or 2 days from now, you're gonna see something, be like, damn it, I should have said that as my answer.
What? Always happen. I was like, that was the name. It was so easy. How did I forget? My bad. I'll work on it, I promise.
No worries. Question number 9. What's the coolest thing you've ever done outside of wrestling?
Outside of wrestling? Ooh, so many things. I feel like traveling the world, like, it's a great thing that I learned so much like about different cultures. I'm curious. I'm super curious. I love to learn another language. Like I'm on my way. I want to start like learn Italian now. I already started, but I kind of pulled off a little bit. I'm going back. Like I love to learn about different cultures.
I love that. And question number 10, last question. Describe the best date night.
Netflix, popcorn, wine, Sammy and my cats.
Perfect. Well said.
All right, in 1 hour here, Filthy Ford Ailey, myself, and Filthy Tom Lawler. And no gimmickry today. We got a lot to talk about. We got SmackDown. We got New Japan Strong. We have the semifinals and finals from the Stardom pay-per-view this past weekend. Tom watched 10 Antonio Inoki matches. And, yeah, we got to get through all of that in an hour. So if you're interested in any of those topics... Filthy Ford Ailey. Video.f4wonline.com. You can watch live at 2 Pacific, 5 Eastern.
Oh, God, I hope we watch the Island match with Saito.
I should watch that before the show.
It'll take him 2 hours to talk about it.
And then Wrestling Observer, it was like a 40-minute match or hour and 40 minutes or something.
Yeah.
I don't have time to watch that one. And then at WrestlingObserver.com, you can listen to all the shows as well because WrestlingObserver.com has every show we've ever done archived dating back to 2005. We are now over 14,000 shows. I remember when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Went to the Smithsonian Institute.
Uh-huh.
And they said, you know, if you wanted to look at every exhibit in the Smithsonian, you couldn't do it in your lifetime.
Wow.
And I was like, that's BS. It's like 5 buildings. I mean, I could probably do it in a week. I couldn't spend a lot of time on everything, but, you know, at worst a year. But you're telling me if I lived to be 85, 105 years old, whatever, I couldn't look at everything in this. I find that impossible to believe.
Especially if we move to DC. Yeah, really.
Now, if you're counting, like, we got a whole bunch of books there, and we're counting you reading every book cover to cover, that's fine. But, you know, when I look at 14,000 archived podcasts, you could do it in your lifetime, but you could probably be better served doing something else. But you know what? They're there. If you want to go back and listen to this show or that, listen to all the Bryan Alvarez shows from start to finish. Start in like 2019 would be my recommendation. But there's a lot of stuff there, so check it out, WrestlingObserver.com. And that is it, everybody. We are out of time. Thanks, Mike, as always, callers and listeners. Everybody in the studio. We'll talk to you next time. Wrestling Observer Live.